In this video, I'm going to be talking about the subject of sacred geometry and why it is important to know more about it, especially since sacred geometry is a language of geometric patterns that spans all cultures, timelines, and species on Earth and beyond. It is the foundation of everything in existence when broken down to the smallest parts. My name is Michelle Gibson. This is the flower of life pattern upon which it is based. It is the creation pattern of the universe, and when you connect the centers of each circle, you find all the sacred geometric shapes are contained within it, including but not limited to the star tetrahedron, which is one of the 5 Platonic solids, all of which are contained within the flower of life. The 5 shapes shown here are within the fruit of life, also known as Metatron's cube, in the flower of life pattern. Named after the Greek philosopher Plato, each one of the Platonic solids is a polyhedron, which is a solid with flat faces. Each face is of the same size and shape, and all are convex polyhedrons, meaning having many finite points, but not all on the same plane. They are also associated with the 5 elements. The hexahedron, or cube, is associated with earth. The octahedron is associated with air. The tetrahedron is associated with fire. The icosahedron is associated with water. And the dodecahedron is associated with ether and the universe. The 5th element has been removed from our education, so we only learn about the first 4 in school: earth, air, fire, and water. We only get to see Hollywood's version of the 5th element, which has an element of truth. But you know how Hollywood is about stuff. Think of the earth with a flower of life superimposed over it. Ley lines represent the sacred geometric shapes that are contained within the flower of life when the lines are connected to the centers of the circles. Ley lines are geometric, linear, and circular alignments that were groomed by an ancient civilization that we are taught nothing about, to harness and carry currents of electromagnetic earth energy with pockets of concentrated energy at nodal points where they intersect. The original ancient advanced Moorish master masons applied sacred geometry in what is called Moorish science or Moorish masonry in creating infrastructure and communities in harmony, balance, beauty, and unity with each other and the universe. The single eye at the top of the pyramid in the Great Seal of the Moors represents reconnecting with our higher selves, and not the all-seeing eye of the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati and the New World Order that it has come to be associated with. Symbols were co-opted from the original meanings, and the meaning of the symbols applied in a different context. Moor is related to Moor, or Ancient One, going back to the time of Mu, or Lemuria, and are an ancient people living in the present day. Their worldwide existence has been removed from our historical narrative with the exception of Moorish Spain between 711 AD and 1492 AD, also known as Al-Andalus, called a golden age of science and culture when Al-Andalus was a major center for intellectual and scientific advancement. Now I'm going to note some other geometric terms for definition, like fractals. Fractals are complex, infinitely recursive curves or geometric structures in mathematics. Common fractals include the Mandelbrot set. A recursive curve or structure is one that repeats perfectly through the consistent pattern. Fractals are found in architecture around the world and throughout the natural world. Fractals define the way in which plants grow, such as tree branches, the veins within leaves, the spirals within pine cones, and even snowflakes. These complex fractal structures make way for perfection and repetition, and yet infinite variety within nature. It's also important to mention ratios. A ratio, structured as 2 to 1, for example, is a relation between two numbers which demonstrates how often the second number is contained within the first one. Although fractals themselves may base their patterns upon any number, fractal dimensions are ratios that depict the complexity of a fractal and the amount of space it takes up as it scales. This is depicting a fractal of the golden ratio and/or Fibonacci spiral. The Fibonacci spiral, also known as the golden spiral, is a spiral that gets wider with every quarter turn by a factor of phi. Phi is an irrational number and mathematical constant. The ratio arises from the proportions of dividing a line into two specific parts so that the whole length of the line divided by its longer section is equal to the longest section divided by the shortest section. Phi is known as the golden ratio or the divine ratio because without phi, the Fibonacci spiral and its beautiful patterns throughout nature would not exist. In nature, the Fibonacci spiral is one of the many patterns that presents itself as a fractal, besides pine cones mentioned earlier, like sunflowers. Daisies and roses are perfect examples of Fibonacci spirals in nature. You also find Fibonacci spirals on shells like that of the nautilus. Phi and Fibonacci spirals' omnipresence throughout life in all knowable forms has merited its title as the code of life. The golden spiral of Phi is also found at places like sacred sites on the earth, like in Egypt, in relationship to the pyramids of the Giza Plateau. Fibonacci numbers form a sequence, such that each number is the sum of the two preceding ones, starting from 0 and 1. The beginning of the sequence is thus 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, and so on. This is the relationship between the Fibonacci sequence and the Phi ratio. In the Fibonacci sequence, any given number is approximately 1.618 times the preceding number, ignoring the first few numbers. Next, what is pi? Pi is an irrational number and mathematical constant originally defined as the ratio between a circle's circumference to its diameter. The circumference is the distance around the entire circle. The diameter is the length of a line that runs through the center of a circle from one side to its opposing side. The equation roughly equates to 3.14, as you can see. Although mathematicians have yet to decipher a pattern for the infinite series of digits following the decimal in pi, it is responsible for many patterns we see within nature, like a zebra's stripes and a leopard's spots. I first learned about sacred geometry at a Flower of Life workshop in 2007 when I was living in Fairbanks, Alaska, and knowing about sacred geometry is one of the things that has been most instrumental in guiding me in uncovering the information I am bringing forward of what I have learned through tracking the Earth's ley lines and seeing the same hand of design of the original advanced Moorish civilization all over the Earth. I was guided to find the shape of a star tetrahedron in 2016, 9 years after I took the Flower of Life workshop, after I connected the dots of cities lining up in North America, and then extended all of the lines coming off of it around the world. I wrote down in spreadsheets the cities and places that were connecting in circular or linear fashion. Then I looked at countless images and watched hours and hours of drone videos, and I saw the same signature and hand of design from ancient to modern all over the Earth. Much of my work is based on what I found when I started to do in-depth research on tracking cities and places in circular or linear alignment, in what appears to be in sacred geometric relationship with each other all over the Earth. In the over 8 years I've been doing this research work, I have found stunning examples of symmetry, proportion, and alignment around the world between archways and openings of not only architecture, but what are called natural features as well, that appear to be intentional and not random. This is Keyhole Rock at Pfeiffer Beach at Big Sur in California. The light comes through the keyhole arch perfectly during the winter solstice time of year in December and January. The winter and summer solstices are when the sun reaches its maximum distance from the celestial equator, creating the year's longest night at the winter solstice and the longest day at the summer solstice. Same idea at the Durdle Door near Lulworth, England in Dorset, which also has a solar alignment during the winter solstice period. Buildings and infrastructure are also aligned with the solar and lunar cycles and other astronomical events. A famous one is the solar alignment with the central tower of the main temple of Angkor Wat on the equinoxes, the time of year in the spring and fall when the sun crosses the plane of the Earth's equator and day and night are of equal length. To name a few of countless other examples, the U.S. Capitol Building in Washington, D.C., the Texas State Capitol Building in Austin, Texas, and the Statue of Liberty on Liberty Island in the Upper New York Bay. This astronomical phenomena even includes the entire city street grid of Manhattan. A phenomenon known as Manhattan Hinge occurs twice every year, in which the setting sun or the rising sun is aligned with the east-west street grid of Manhattan on dates evenly spaced around the summer solstice and winter solstice. There are similar alignments with the sun and street plan that occur in other major cities like Toronto, Baltimore, Chicago, and Montreal. I find these precise astronomical alignments occurring with the tops of lighthouses and places like the Taj Mahal in Agra, India, to name a few of many. Also, the same perfect alignment occurs with archways and buildings all over the world, like in Spain at the Alcazar in Seville, and the Alhambra in Granada, the Elizabeth Tower at the Palace of Westminster, the Parliament Building in London, l'École Militaire, or the military school, through the Eiffel Tower's archway in Paris, at the Palace of the Kings of Majorca in Perpignan in southern France, in Hungary at the Fisherman's Bastion in Budapest, where you can see the Hungarian Parliament building framed perfectly through the archways. In Italy, you see St. Peter's Basilica at Vatican City through this archway. At Petra in Jordan, an ancient city carved right into the rock. At the Blue Mosque in Isfahan, Iran. In India, at the Taj Mahal in Agra. In Indonesia, at the Baturaman Grand Mosque in Banda Aceh, which survived the 2004 Boxing Day earthquake and tsunami. In Louisiana, at the Jefferson Memorial and the Old Jefferson Parish Courthouse in Gretna. And in Hartford, Connecticut, at the Bushnell Park Memorial Arch. Other similarities in different places include the architectural design of towers, window arrangements, and directional orientation I found in Old Ouarzazate in Saharan Morocco on the left, Santa Cruz de Tenerife in the Canary Islands in the middle, and the city of Atchison in Kansas on the right. Now I'm going to delve into the topic of relationships between sacred geometry and the human body, starting with the relationship between human embryonic development and the flower of life. Before conception, the ovum is a sphere. Being the only animal cell you can see with the naked eye, the ovum is the largest cell in the human body, 200 times greater than that of the average cell. Conception begins when the sperm reaches the ovum. From hundreds of sperm, roughly 12 work together as a unit. Through their total unified action, only one of the sperm gets to enter the ovum. The sperm tail then breaks off and the head of the sperm forms a sphere exactly the same size as the female pronucleus. These then merge and form a vesica piscis. The vesica piscis is the first sacred geometric figure to emerge in the process of creating the flower of life pattern. The sperm and ovum then pass right through each other to form the zygote. The zygote now contains 44 plus 2 chromosomes. Next, mitosis occurs and the polar bodies migrate to opposite ends of the cell and form a north and south pole. A tube then splits the chromosomes, with half going to one side of the tube and half to the other side. A zygote then splits into 4 cells and forms a tetrahedron inside a sphere. The next division yields 8 cells and a star tetrahedron, which is also a cube. At this point, it is called the egg of life. The 8 cells appear to be identical. The location of these 8 cells is in the geometrical center of the body, at the perineum, and do not die while we are alive. Humans grow radially out from this form. The first 8 cells then divide into 8 more cells and form a cube within a cube. This is the last time that cellular division is symmetrically geometrical. When the cells divide from 16 to 32 cells, there are 2 spaces left over. When the cells divide from 32 to 64 cells, it becomes even more asymmetrical. The embryo starts to become hollow and return to the shape of a sphere. The North Pole begins to connect to the South Pole, forming a hollow tube in the middle and curling into a torus. A torus is a ring-shaped geometric solid formed by a rotating circle on an axis that lies in the same plane as the circle but doesn't intersect it. A toroidal field is a field whose lines of force circulate continuously around a torus that form closed loops that guide energy. Next, I'm going to take a look at the human body and the phi ratio. There are many examples of phi, also known as the golden ratio, the golden section, and the golden mean, found throughout the design of the universe. But let's take a look at you. In this diagram of phi, each line is 1.618 times longer than the one before it. Conversely, a section drawn at 0.618 of each line equals the length of the one before it. Let's start with something simple. Look at the proportions of your index finger. Each section of your index finger from the tip to the base of the wrist is larger than the preceding one by about the phi ratio of 1.618, also fitting the Fibonacci numbers 2, 3, 5, and 8. By this scale, your fingernail is 1 unit in length. Curiously enough, you also have 2 hands, each with 5 digits, and your 8 fingers are each comprised of 3 sections, all Fibonacci numbers. Here are other ways of expressing the same basic relationship in its connection to the golden ratio and golden spiral with your fingers. And your hand. The ratio of the forearm to hand is phi, as your hand creates a golden section in relation to your arm, as the ratio of your forearm to your hand is also 1.618, the divine proportion. With regards to the legs, phi ratios include, but are not limited to, the length of the foot to the lower leg bone to the thigh bone. The widest part of the thigh is in phi proportion to the narrowest part of the thigh, and the width of the leg at the calf is in phi proportion with the width of the ankle. The foot has several proportions based on phi lines, including the middle of the arch of the foot, the widest part of the foot, the base of the toe line and big toe, the top of the toe line, and base of the index toe. With regards to the phi ratio and the human body itself, typically between the navel and the bottom of the feet runs 61.8%, and between the navel and the top of the head runs 38.2%. We are told Leonardo da Vinci's most famous work was the Vitruvian Man, said to have been created around 1490 and first reproduced in the 1800s, and described the human figure as being the principal source of proportion among the classical orders of architecture. The Vitruvian Man inside of the square and circle represents the divine temple, the link between heaven and earth, and the middle mesocosm that unites the microcosm with the macrocosm of our known universe. The idea that man, temple, and cosmos were identical was the understanding upon which the philosophy and science of the ancient world was founded, like, for example, as seen in this diagram of a Hindu temple in relationship to human proportions. The pineal gland is a small, pine cone-shaped endocrine gland located in the epithalamus, near the center of the brain between the two hemispheres, tucked in a groove where the two halves of the thalamus join. Also known as the third eye, when activated, the pineal gland opens the door to psychic abilities and is our connection to the divine. Much has been done to keep the third eye of people from opening, including the use of fluoride in toothpaste and water, which causes the calcification of the pineal gland. The pineal gland is located in the region of our brain in between our temples. The sacred geometry of the human pineal gland, like the pine cone, is the Fibonacci sequence. The original advanced civilization on Earth was learning how to raise Kundalini energy from the base of the spine up to the pineal gland and thus reconnect with the divine. Kundalini, an ancient Sanskrit word meaning coiled snake, refers to a potential force within the human being that resides at the base of the spine. Its release typically cultivated through spiritual practice, though it can happen spontaneously as well, and leads to a transformative spiritual awakening and expansion of consciousness of the experiencer. Bindu Visarga belongs to the highest plane of truth, and the awakening of Bindu provides you with the ultimate truth of nature and the universe. Bindu is in the uppermost part of the Hindu symbol Om, as it is kept above all of it because it is transcendental and beyond the limit of nature. Next, the human ear. While the outer ear follows along the lines of a phi spiral, the cochlea, while not considered phi, is a geometric spiral that is part of the inner ear involved in hearing. A key component of the cochlea is called the organ of Corti, the receptor organ for hearing, consisting of tiny hair cells that translate the fluid vibration of sounds from its surrounding ducts into electrical impulses that are carried to the brain by sensory nerves. Our DNA molecules even conform to the phi ratio. The self-replicating hereditary material called deoxyribonucleic acid that has key information about each person's unique genome. I mentioned the form of a torus earlier in this video in reference to the developing human embryo. The torus is a core-level sacred geometry form and a process by which all energy, when correctly aligned, is perpetually cycling up and down and around, without stopping, between spirit and matter. Our energy bodies contain heart and brain toroidal fields, of which the heart is by far the stronger of the two. Through our shared geometries and the mechanisms of creation, we are intrinsically connected with all that is in existence. I'm going to end this video here on what sacred geometry is and why it is important, and in the next video, I'm going to look at broader applications of sacred geometry in terms of being an operative mechanism for consciousness and the universe.